The amateur archaeologist Marcelino Sanz de Soto was playing with his 8-year-old daughter Maria when he came across some drawings inside a cave. He got a feeling that these drawings were really old, and eventually these caves came to be known as the Cueva de Altamira, or the Caves of Altamira. It was much later in 1946, when radiocarbon dating was invented, that people realized that the paintings in the Altamira caves dated back to 34,000 BC. And these are perhaps the earliest known of the cave paintings we have discovered so far. One of the earliest instances of communication as we know it today. Fast forward to year 2020. This is what bison drawings and art has evolved to. If you look at the evolution of communication, it started with very basic, and as technology advanced, the forms of communication, the form of language evolved with time. Unfortunately, we live in an era today where 140 character tweets have become equivalent to what was essays about a century ago. Today, during the COVID-19 pandemic, the world is facing a crisis of unprecedented proportions. Schools have been shut down, and students are today learning from home using various digital methods. Teachers are conducting the classes online. The parents are playing a much larger role in the whole education process. However, one major concern that has come across has been that the students who are learning from home are failing to absorb those implied nuances of education system as we have. And the most important perhaps is the importance of communication. A very good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Together for Education webinar brought to you by Notebook. Our topic today, the art of expression, will try to explore the various nuances of communication, the importance of the communication skills in a student's life, and we will hear from experts on how best you as a teacher or a parent can help in honing this skill for your student or child. Before we move on to the stellar panel that we have, a few requests. I can see a lot of you are already raising your hands, and I can completely understand why, given the fantastic panel we have today. However, if you have questions, we request you to use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen to please type in these questions. At the end, we have a question answer session, and we will try and moderate these questions to the best of our abilities and in the given time. With that said, it is now my great pride and privilege to introduce to you our first speaker. Our first speaker today is Mr. Philip Burrett. Mr. Burrett retired as the Deputy Headmaster from the illustrious Doon School in Dehradun after 44 years of serving in education across various academic institutions. Mr. Burrett served the Doon School as Housemaster, Head of Department, Dean of Student Welfare, Dean of Activities, Deputy Headmaster, Second Master, and Acting Headmaster with great distinction. He also carried out a visioning exercise for the Doon School in 2011 through an in-depth study of a number of British public schools in the UK and various schools in the US. Mr. Burrett qualified as a leadership trainer at the Wellington College, UK in the year 2000. He's also an athlete, an adventurer, and a naturalist. It is my great privilege to introduce to you Mr. Philip Burrett. Sir, if you're there.
Thank you very much, Subayu. Am I audible?
Loud and clear, sir.
Yeah. Good evening to you and Achin and our stellar panel and all those guests who have tuned in for this webinar. Very good evening to you. So looking at the topic, I said the forms of expression. And I just wondered, there are so many ways in which we express ourselves through the way we dress, through the way we speak, the way we behave, in fact, the way that we grow our hair and groom ourselves, in what we eat and what we believe in, through our art and music and our sports, our interests. And not only individuals, but even schools have a way of expressing themselves in their own ways. Today, I wish to take up the form of expression mainly through the art of communication. So if you notice, communication goes a long way from pinned up messages to trees in village squares, to the Maasai tom-tom drums and the Red Indian smoke signals, even a wink or a finger to the lip gesture, to the telex machines, cell phones, and the 5G super fiber optic networks, or just simply raising an eyelid to a recalcitrant child. They're all forms of communication. And all animal life, from the roots that bees take when searching for flowers, and ants that brush against each other on their way to their anthills, to the high-pitched screeching of whales, and the braille scripts for the blind, everything and everybody communicates. So, roughly, communication can be divided into 6 subtypes. There is oral communication, like the oral histories that are passed down, and the skills, like carpet weaving, that is passed down from generation to generation. The written communication. Can you imagine the excitement with the discovery of papyrus? And of course, verbal communication as a classroom lecture, and non-verbal communication. Imagine an obscene hand gesture from a raging driver. And of course, there is formal and non-formal communication. And this often gets mixed up by young people. Uh, for example, the use of slang in the principal's office wouldn't go down too well with the principal. And communication has different meanings in different cultures. For example, a rude burp after a meal might mean bad manners in one culture, while in another, it would be in a sign of high appreciation. Talking about teachers and communication, I think the word communication is synonymous with teachers and teaching. And often what we do and what we have done so far is almost 80% talking. Teachers need to communicate information, ideas, as well as processes and procedures, rules and consequences to children. And they do this by various means, from speaking on the phone, writing emails, writing letters, sending reports, using the social media. Yeah, and a good school actually establishes rules of communication. For example, the one that's really got me sometimes is should teachers be friends with their students on Facebook? It's something that schools and teachers must consider. Communication is also done by way of notice board announcements, little slips left on student desks or teachers' lockers. We talk to everybody, from our bosses to our students to our parents, visitors, our support staff, and our guests. And a good school, I think, is one that does this well and communicates transparently to its stakeholders, governors, alumni, students, patrons, as well as the wider community outside the walls of the school. The impression that the outside world has of a school is so largely dependent on how a school communicates to all its stakeholders. Sometimes people outside get a totally wrong impression of schools. For example, the school I worked in was considered elitist by most people, till they come in and we communicate to them the type of beds and the Spartan dormitories and the frugal food and the simple uniforms that we wear. And they leave with a totally different image of the school. It's important that communication be taught to teachers, whether training college or whether in-service training, because nothing ruins the name of a school more than a rude or thoughtless communication between a teacher and a parent. I think communication is a part of what I would call total quality management. So from the way you write your CV, for example, a young person applying for a job, you're more likely to be called for an interview if you have an impressive CV. It's a solid first impression. So it starts from the CV, and then you come into school and you learn how to communicate. So I put together some of the points that lead to good communication, and there are a lot of C's. So I've called it the C's of communication. One would be courtesy. When we communicate, it's got to be with respect, with politeness. Whether you're writing to a parent regarding the non-payment of fees or a child's misbehavior, it's very important that we communicate with courtesy. Also, correctness. One has to get all the facts and the data correct when you communicate. There should be nothing ambiguous. And in these days of fake news, false information, which we are bombarded by, it's important that children are taught how to decipher and to sift the grain from the chaff, what is relevant, what is not. Clarity and conciseness. Brevity is the real key word here. Not many people have the time to read long letters. One has to be brief, concise, and otherwise, too many words and the communication falls flat. Creativity is another C. We have to pick the right medium to communicate. It's got to be an unusual way, not like cliched, not cut and paste. Parents don't like cut and paste communication. It's got to come from the heart. It's got to be original. Surprisingly, good communication starts with good listening. And I think listening to students, parents, and colleagues is one of the greatest skills that a teacher or a head of a school has. There's also nonverbal communication, paying attention, your body language. Are you fidgeting around while you're talking to a student? Are you answering phones when a student or a teacher is talking to you? Body language is so important. Consideration is another C. It's got to be friendly, and you've got to consider. I had a principal once in one of the schools I worked in, where he was the master of an art called the broken record. So when parents bombarded him and pleaded for admissions for their children who hadn't gotten to school, the principal would say, with folded hands, he'd say, "I'm so sorry. My heart goes out to you. I can feel your pain, but I can't do anything about it." And the parents would hit him again by saying, "But, can you please consider?" And he would say, "I can understand your pain. I can understand your feeling and your brokenheartedness, but," and he would carry on, but he would treat the parent who came in at 5 o'clock in the evening with the same degree of respect as he would treat the parent who walked in at 7:30 in the morning. Of course, then there's also another C called the confidentiality. Often we need to know what to communicate and what to not communicate. There must be something unsaid. A lot of teachers make the mistake of talking loosely in staff rooms, talking about things that children have, said to them in confidence. And this discretion is a very important part of communication. At the same time, it's got to be very honest. I once wrote a recommendation to one of my students for a US college. It was quite a scathing report. I didn't write a very good report. So I was called by my head and said, "Do you mind changing this?" And I said, "No, I think that what I have written is honest." And so the headmaster, my headmaster, took another view and gave him a very glowing report, hoping that his report would negate mine. Well, what happened 3 months later? Our little friend was rusticated from the US college for something naughty he had done, and he had to come back to India. And the headmaster, I have to give him full credit, called me up and said, "You were right and I was wrong because you spoke the truth." And I would have been, wrongly appraised by US, colleges, the admission department, if I had just said what I thought was right. So open-minded is also very important. We have to learn when we are wrong. We have to apologize when we've taken a wrong step. We have to see the other point of view. And lastly, I'd come to the word feedback. I think it's important in communication in schools that all mail be replied to immediately within 12 hours, or some school rule about within a day we will reply to all correspondence. I think a really good school is known by how fast it can get back to the people who wrote in. I once had an incident where there were prospective parents who were roaming around the school, looking at the school. They were wondering whether they should put their son into the school I worked in. And I saw them and they looked pretty lost. And it was evening. Two boys from my house were walking around. So I said, "Do you mind if these boys show you around?" So these two little 13-year-olds took these visitors from Bombay for a walk around our 70-acre campus. And at the end of it, when they came home, they said, "We've decided our son will come here because the two boys who were with us were the best ambassadors we could ever think of. We have seen these two boys and we are now putting our kid here." And that is communication, that is expression. Nothing could have improved on what these two little boys had done. Often good communication doesn't happen because lack of time, language barriers, lack of resources, and not knowing exactly how to get a point across. And we've got to ask ourselves, teachers and heads, what is coming in the way of our communication? What is the problem? Technology can help good communication with our emails and our quick connecting with staff, students through a letterless system. Websites, parents have these websites and WhatsApp sections. Sometimes they're a nuisance, I do agree. There's Google Classroom, Edmondo, sharing lessons, phone blasts, a lot of automated systems that will robocall phone numbers, social media connectivity. So digital systems help us communicate. They're not the only form, but they help us communicate through a variety of mediums, with videos, audios, and the written communication. Now, if you look at the pandemic and what's happened over the last few months, students are at home, as Shubayu told you, they're missing classes, but the schools are communicating with them. Their parents are in touch with teachers, kids are in touch with their teachers. I'm in touch with the head of my daughter. And schools have done a wonderful job communicating with people. Um, Technology can help teachers connect with resources, and they can also help teachers connect with teachers. This is something that really needs to be done more of. Teacher forums, where teachers stay in touch with teachers and upgrade their knowledge and exchange ideas and learn from each other. Um, we all have to use within our means, whatever we have in our means to communicate. And technology is not our enemy. It's our help if utilized well. Thank you. Thanks, Sobai. Over to you.
Thank you so much, sir, for those enlightening words. As you rightly said, a lot of teachers and students are using the digital medium to converse these days. And we sincerely hope that this brings back some degree of propriety that has been missing from social media and other forms of digital communications of late. With that background to digital learning, it is now time to introduce our next speaker, Achin. Achin Bhattacharya is the founder and CEO of Notebook. He is a chartered accountant by training. He was a director at Deloitte before starting Notebook. He has worked in India and abroad in various senior capacities in GE, PwC, KPMG, and Deloitte. Achin is an avid reader and a passionate traveler, with a keen interest in economics, history, literature, and philosophy. He is a regular speaker at various forums and chambers of commerce, and also contributes articles to numerous publications regularly. He is also on the board of some of the most renowned corporates and contributes significantly to brand strategies. Achin, over to you.
Shubhayu, am I audible?
Loud and clear.
Good evening, everyone. I once again welcome you to today's webinar on a topic which is perhaps the most important in defining a person's growth trajectory, but one of the least discussed ones. A very special thanks to our panelists today for taking their time out and being with us to enlighten us with their views. Now, we all understand the fundamental need to express ourselves. It is one of the most sought after skills which help us to build bridges in every arena of life. But the question is, what makes some people really good at expressing themselves? So what is the magic pill? Now, let me share a small real life story that took place in a coastal town in the eastern part of India. It's a story of two friends who were together in the same class, but quite opposite in terms of their nature. While Rahul was really good in his studies, he mostly kept to himself and rarely socialized. He consistently topped his class, but had very little interest in mixing with others. However, he was the first person to raise his hands whenever the teacher asked any question in the class. Shiv, on the other hand, was just the opposite. He was average in his studies, but had one rare quality. Most students in his class, including Rahul, would easily choose him as their best friend, as he got along exceptionally well with one and all. He also took active interest in sports, local festivals, group theatre, and later in college life, his popularity only soared. Today, 2 decades from the time they left school, Rahul works in an IT company and stays in Bangalore. Shiv has a flourishing international travel business and stays in Mumbai. So recently, this happened when Rahul was in an European city and needed some urgent help with paperwork. He got into some trouble. His old friend Shiv came to his rescue as he could speak to the tourism minister and get things moving. Now, we all have seen many successful Shivs in our life. People with great common sense, gift of the gab, and infectiously positive body language, and the ability to get along with one and all. Now, have you ever wondered why are some people more sought after than others? Very often, we see doctors with the same qualification, practicing in the same vicinity. While the first one may have a long waiting list, the other gentleman may be just a walking away. So why the difference? What is it that really sets two professionals apart in any field? It is not only their domain knowledge, which I believe is given, but their capacity to connect with the recipient of their services and how good they are at being able to explain complicated concepts in a common man's language. Thus, what is very important is to be able to connect, empathy to think from the other person's perspective. The same is true in teaching as well. I'm sure we have so many educators here who will be able to relate to me. The difference between the popularity of two teachers is seldom on account of what they teach, and is more so because of how they teach. Now, I think communication is a far wider concept. It has much more than verbal communication. So it is not only the gift of the gab that counts, but also your positivity, body language. The domain of effective communication is much beyond, it's much wider than verbal communication. Expressing yourself, I believe, is a much wider concept. And at times, silence also speaks. You can express yourself without words. The gentleman in the frame was an institution in himself. Some of his best works were silent, even after talking movies were being made. He released City Lights in 1931 and Modern Times in 1936, well after the first talkie, The Jazz Singer. The Jazz Singer was released in 1927, if I recollect. But coming back to Chaplin, only in 1940, he made his first talking movie, The Great Dictator, on the life of Hitler. And some of his best works are in silent movies. Now, with the advent of social media as a platform, I believe that with passage of time, platforms of communication might have shifted even before this phase of social distancing that we are currently going through. Friends were meeting in Facebook and not in the neighborhood tea shop. At times, husband and wife were chatting on WhatsApp from different rooms in the same house, calling each other for dinner. However, even if platforms have changed, the skills needed to bring life into regular generic aspects haven't changed. The art of expression is as important as ever, if not more. So how do we teach our children to express themselves better? It is important that we encourage them to have a voice, to express with confidence. Time and experiences will teach what is right and what is wrong. But it is very important that we inject positivity and the right attitude in them from day one. Now, it is important to work together on soft skills. Now, there are two elements to it. First, I believe, is to increase exposure. Good reading habits, traveling, socializing, exposure to arts and different cultures, debates, dramas, writing habits, and developing other hobbies and interests. Children need to gradually be taught to get over any kind of stage fright. As a parent or teacher, it is our responsibility to constantly and continuously give company to the child in this journey. So first element is exposure. Now coming on, it's equally important to nurture, right? We need to constantly nurture these areas. Mere exposure, I believe, is not enough. It can't be a mere one-time activity. It needs to be a way of life. Now, as we have all seen in our professional lives, in any organization, beyond middle management, it's mostly the softer skills that acts as a filter. As I said earlier, domain knowledge is given, but you are not made the CEO because you are the best technocrat, but most often because you have a mature, wholesome understanding of the universe around you. And also, you can carry the organization on your shoulders and get along. Thus, we need to nurture these aspects continuously. Now, another very important aspect, which I feel, considering the fact that we have a wonderful platform here with so many senior educators, I believe that as a civil society, it is very important, it is very important that we give equal importance to all subjects. So as members of the academic fraternity, we need to ensure that equal importance is given to all subjects. Subjects like literature and social sciences are no less important, as they enrich you for many interesting conversations in future. Next, another very important aspect is coming back to confidence. As a teacher or parent, the biggest gift that we can give to our children is confidence to take on the world, to make them understand that it's perfectly fine to speak up and communicate your suggestions or concern. In spite of knowing everything, very often, many people are not able to optimally utilize their skills because of the fact that they lack the confidence to speak out, as they very often keep on thinking about perceptions or reaction of the person on the other side of the table. It's important that we teach our children to be human and to come to terms with the fact that it's perfectly normal to sometimes make mistakes, but it's a crime to stop trying. Another very equally important aspect, which I believe, is that we teach our next generation to rise up, to see the world and express your thoughts in your own way. You can definitely learn from others, but you should grow up to be yourself and just not like someone else. It's good to get inspired, but don't imitate. Now, as you would all agree, that the world needs individuals with overall development and not those who have never looked beyond their textbooks. It's important to encourage an active social life, involvement in sports. Also, any form of art teaches you very beautifully to express yourself, any form of art, be it singing, dancing, painting. I'll just share another very small story. Last year, I was in London and I walked into one of my friend's office, who has a very successful machinery distribution business across UK. Most of his presence is in the southern part. He was just starting an interview when I walked in. I wanted to excuse myself quite naturally, but he insisted that I stay on. The preliminary rounds were over and those were taken by his managers. And he always followed a 4:1 rule. The 4:1 rule is he looked at 4 candidates to select one. The interview was for a very senior sales job. And I saw that he asked the same question to all 4 candidates. And based on that, he chose one. And it was just a one-liner. Tell me a story. Later, I asked him the rationale behind it. And his answer was very simple. He said, doesn't matter which story. I just wanted to see how they say it. Thus, it's important that we unblock our creative energy. We need to promote creativity, encourage equal emphasis on soft skills. It is not something to be learned by attending a full-day seminar or workshop. It needs to be a way of life. I thank all of you for giving me a very patient hearing. We have a very diverse panel today, and I look forward to the insights on this pertinent topic. Thank you. Over to you, Shubham.
Thank you, Achin. Thank you for sharing all those thoughts with us. And it is now time for the guest panelists to start speaking. I'm sure this is what a lot of you have been waiting for. So without any further delay, let me introduce to you our first speaker. Our first speaker today is Saleha Yohann. Saleha is a communication skills trainer. She's had 20 years of experience across Jet Airways in training and developing frontline ambassadors, cabin crew, and others, brand communication and marketing, and PR with high-value customers, which were the Jet Privilege, Jet and Gold and Platinum customers. And she also works in celebrity management. She currently manages PR for Shabana Azmi and Mr. Javed Akhtar, and for various Times Group events. She has designed the training content and herself trains the VFS Global officers. She is currently in her 11th year of training pageant participants. These are aspirants to pageants like the Miss India pageant in communication skills and public speaking. It is indeed our privilege to have Saleha with us today. Ma'am, over to you.
Thank you very much for that warm introduction, Shubhayu. Hello, everyone. I heard the presentation by Mr. Burrett, Mr. Bhattacharya. Very enlightening. Would like to take it from Mr. Bhattacharya's point of the last slide that said, say yes. So coming from an airline industry, we used to develop cabin crew who are 18 years, 20 years, straight out of college, or they have just finished their 12th standard because that was the minimum qualification. Before Jet Airways, I also used to work with children, with Rayal Padamsi, the theater producer, and she's also runs an academy called the Academy for Creative Expression. I used to teach children. I started my career with teaching children ages 2.5 to 13 years. So we used to teach them theater workshops to make them more confident, to make them, to train them into speaking well, to train them into elocution, speech, etc. So my take, what I would say to all the educators out here is, I have noticed one thing. It's a wish, which I would like to tell you, if you all could make it true for me. I would love all the school teachers, principals to not have the culture of using the word no, never, not, can't, don't. Imagine a word like that, where we don't have these negative words existing in our lives. We do say no though, but we use positive affirmation in terms of communication because that is pleasing to the ears. And imagine if our children are trained as kids to avoid using these words and speaking in using positive affirmation, this entire world would be a different world as they grow. Because this comes to me, I used to teach all the crew and all the kids and the pageant participants now to avoid speaking no, never, not, can't, don't. And trust me, they used to keep thinking, how will they do it? And we used to, make my concept of teaching would be learn with fun. So I would definitely want to talk about fun with learning concept while teaching the children or young adults or anyone per se. Fun with learning, introducing simple concepts like don't say no, never, not, can't, don't. Probably in class, those who say it, I used to tell my class that, let's collect money because they are 18 to 20. So I used to tell them, every no will cost you a rupee. Every don't will cost you 2 rupees. Every can't will cost you 5 rupees. So there used to be a competition. And then I used to do I used to give them an offer that if one person says no, and I have missed hearing as a trainer, and somebody else sitting next to you has heard, then that person will be exempted if he's charged any money in terms of if he's used the word no. So this is an offer. You have to be sharp listeners. And at the same time, let's think about how we can avoid saying no, never, not, can't. So I'll give you a simple example. On board the aircraft, the passengers ask, do you have dal chawal? Or what are you all serving today? So the cabin crew will comes and says that, ma'am, today's menu is chicken biryani. Would you like to try? The passenger says, I want dal chawal. So the cabin crew says, sir, today's menu is chicken biryani. So here she's responding to the passenger without saying, no, we are not serving dal chawal today. We are serving biryani. So she's focusing on what she has and not what she does not have. Similarly, we as teachers, as educators, if we inculcate this particular negative affirmation, we throw this negative affirmation out of our lives and bring in the positive affirmation, usage of positive affirmation. Similarly, our students will inculcate that habit because we are reminding them every day while we are speaking. And we need to throw in as a challenge to them as a game in class over and above our curriculum, what we do, because we are inculcating a good habit. So that is one thing that I wanted to mention. Also, I wanted to mention is, I have seen that when you ask somebody, what is kindness? Or what, Mr. Bhattacharya was talking about soft skills. Soft skills is all about being kind, being nice, being liked, carrying the right habits, caring for people. So it's a very simple thing. At home, how do we show kindness to our parents? Or how do we show kindness to our family members? When we ask any kid or a young adult, what do you mean by kindness? They start thinking. So my request would be to all the educators, if we can inculcate and explain a child how he or she can communicate kindness, the difference at home and difference in school. At home, we communicate kindness and care for each other through or respect. We show respect to others through touching our parents' feet, or wishing them good morning, good afternoon, or probably helping them in the kitchen or helping their mothers, etc. But in school, are we able to touch the feet of our teachers? Today, the culture, I don't think we do. So how can we show respect for our teachers? We can show respect by greeting them every morning, by ensuring that we come back on time to school, by ensuring that we are listening to our teachers. This is all respect. So if that is the way we teach our children, by explaining them what it is, they will understand and they will do the needful. I have a 10-year-old and she teaches me every day. For them, it was, I sometimes smile looking at my daughter, because I call my sofa a sofa and she calls it a trampoline. So look at the perspective, how they think and how we think. And she says, Mama, how can I think how you think? So in order to connect, it is very important for us to connect with our students, connect with the children, find out where they need help. And often when any student or any parent comes to talk to us, we slightly become defensive. I would recommend a defensive, instead of defensive, we should start listening, because listening is an opportunity to improve, or opportunity. It may be a very important feedback that a parent is trying to give us. Also, we should provide solutions to the children who are in need, or the parent who is in need. That is why they are approaching you. So if we listen well, then we are able to provide solutions. There are also, I have noticed that there are a lot of children or young adults, they come from different backgrounds. So they have strong mother tongue influence. They'll end up mixing sounds. For example, a r in Hindi is brought into English. They say good morning. Now, good, there is no r in English. The sound r doesn't exist in English. So we need to be careful in terms of sounds. And we need to ensure that we practice and we listen carefully to them, because we are coaching them all the time. So we make them conscious and they start thinking. Positive affirmation will make it fun if we can inculcate that. Fun with learning methods, instead of only speaking, simple things if we do with them. For example, the concept of making bhel. It's just, I hope we all know what is bhel. It's with puffed rice and save. So we can teach them simple things like ratio and measurement. Like we can just tell them 2 cups of puffed rice, half cup of save, half cup of onion. So it is interactive, engaging, exciting, fun, and they make the final product, they eat it. So this is how the concept of learn with fun is very important, because the recall value is more. We can also introduce games such as, I'm sure many schools are already starting to introduce chess. There is another game called Taboo, which works on the vocabulary for children. So we can do activities every morning when they come to school, like bring in a new word, and probably have a wall of vocabulary. Every day we bring in a new word and we use it in class while talking. So that's how we're developing a habit. Each one learns from the other. And every day our vocabulary increases. that is another way of having fun with learning. I would also like to mention that the game called Business is very, very interesting. If we heard about Kidzania, it's on the line of business. Children learn how to buy, sell, strategize. Children learn how to invest. They start thinking, they understand, start learning about saving. There are so many things we can teach through gaming, through fun. I would like to end here. I hope this was helpful, because I believe in positive affirmation. I believe in what I said, and I train minds, influence minds. And I think it's a great opportunity for all we educators that we change lives. We can change lives. So, and as a digital platform, it only gives us an edge. It's another platform which we must explore, keeping the scenario in mind. And as we are evolving and moving ahead, we must keep our minds open and keep that platform open to teaching and learning and introducing new methods to connect with our audience who want everything fast, who want everything fun, who have less attention span, through making learning interesting. Thank you very much. Over to Shuvayu.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for that
My
wonderful
pleasure.
insight into various learning methods and how students can have fun. I wish my teachers were teaching me ratio and proportion using Bhel Puri, so that we didn't have to fight for it after class outside. After that wonderful piece, let me move on to our next speaker. It's my privilege to introduce to you Ms. Manija Subrahmanyam. I beg your pardon. Ms. Subrahmanyam is the principal of the Ecole Globale International Girls' School in Dehradun. She is at the threshold of entering the third decade in the field of school education. She had joined the League of School Principals in the year 2011 and have experienced with a variety of students ranging in age from kindergarten through and including +2 students from different nationalities and regions. Her administrative experience was with Rockwell International IB World School and Oak Ridge International Residential Co-ed School, which gave her ample opportunity to focus on educational initiatives, common core skills, the use of data to drive instruction, and to provide consistent implementation of the curriculum in a rigorous manner so as to increase all of the students' achievements. From adopting technological change to keeping up the philosophy of the Institute, she has found these to be the most important elements in her tenure. To meet the challenges of academic excellence in a constructive, enjoyable, and fostering environment, she has always engaged in working with the 4 pillars, which she calls out: the teacher, the student, the parent, and the society. She has experience in IB, CAIE, and CBSE, and she lends a hand wherever sports, arts, and development of personality is involved, along with the academic core subjects. To her, education is to allow the learners to unsettle their minds, kindle their intellects, and she believes education differentiates between information and knowledge. It is our privilege to present to you Ms. Subrahmanyam. Ma'am, if you're there.
Thank you, Shuvayu.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Ma'am, that's the point. If you want to, you can switch on your video.
Okay. Give me a second.
Sure.
Hello.
Perfect, ma'am. Thank you so much.
See, it's a proud privilege to be a part of this intellectual discussion. As you know, many of us have similar experience. And when we share each other's experience, you know, our perception cements very well. Whatever experience we have, based on that is our perception. And all these things cements very well when we hear out to others. And for many of us, these experiences actually gives those first pedestal on which you can further build up. Now, when we look at communication, different people have different mindset, different thought processes. Almost all of you would have already framed the philosophy of communication, or the definition, not philosophy, the definition for communication. So communication, like exactly how we say that, if there is a key, there is a lock somewhere in this world. In the same manner, communication means different things for different people. Now, from my experience that I gather, I would like to put that communication is to give and receive, not only just opinion, information, and also to respond. It allows a person to expand their arena of influence. We don't want our students, our kids to survive in this epoch, but then we want them to thrive. That's very, very important for us. We all agree that this is an era. It is very progressive in terms of technology, maths, science. But if I ask the correct question, how is it that it became so progressive? It's all because of the communication. Because there was a progressive communication, we reached out to people. That's the reason why we are able to do it. Now, coming to things like, why communication? Now, if you look back to the humanities, human race, there were so many setbacks, but we overcame all of these. And I'm sure this particular pandemic, this particular situation that we are undergoing, I have full faith that we would be surpassing this current situation also. If you remember around 2-3 months back, the fear factor that was created, not created, actually, it was there. And today, the thought process that people have towards it, people dare to step out, people dare to communicate, meet, are ready to work, come outside. I'm sure we all understand why this all happened. These all could happen because communication. The system or the institution that says that communication should be there. This helped us out in sharing our information, somebody else's information, and thereby a very good, healthy, strong communication evolved. And this communication helps us. Now, even when we look back, when we turn our pages to the past, we see that revolutions gave a lot of place to those people who deserves to be heard. I mean, everybody who deserves to be heard. All these things were possible because communication allowed them to unify, to bring them together. It was only because of communication. So communication needs to be reinforced in the lives of our students because it gives them the power to affect their lives as well as that of others. Now, communication, if we say, it's very, very essential. Name it, be a coffee shop, a workplace, maybe with the friends. In everyday life, without communicating with each other, even if it is digitally we are communicating, without communicating, we are not able to sustain. So we need to improve our communication skills so that we can reach out to the fullest potential in whatever we do, be it blogging, be it writing down something for a review or taking a survey. Everything is important. So I would like to put out a survey where it did a survey on people's competency and career readiness. So this agency is National Association of Colleges and Employees, which said that, a person can be called competent and career ready when they are able to articulate their thoughts and ideas clearly, effectively, both in written form and oral form, both inside and outside the organization. The individual should have public speaking skills, should be able to express ideas to others, should be able to write, edit letters, memos, complex technical reports, and that all should be very clearly done and effectively done. The previous speakers also, as they said, that when we look after a cutout above the managerial levels, that we all aspire to, our kids aspire to, this is what the employers, the market look at. Schools play a very important role. Now, schooling time, this particular time that the child spends, is one of the most important time where we could develop effective communication skills. when they are in school, that is the time where they explore language, their message choices, learns about emotions, try to navigate the peer pressure. They also build a sense of self, identity comes in. It is often assumed that, kids, they will develop. This is communication skill is something that anyhow it would come in. But then, if in case we could give a formalized instruction in order to improve the communication skills, I'm sure that our kid, their future especially, can be secured and would be much better and brighter. Now, importance of providing early training in communication skills, you will find that down the line towards the school side, it has seen a change. We see that schools prepare the kids for public speaking, puts them for recitals, debates, which is very good. That's how it has to, because these things improve the kid's thought process. It makes the child think creatively and makes the child a critical thinker. Now, if you see our society, there was an era where people used to, we were a society which was more on production line, manufacturing industries. But today it is not the scenario. Today the focus is on where workers actually interact with information. Now, in this shift of knowledge focused area, if you see, success will heavily depend on communication. Solid communication competencies should be there with the students. And I think it is the responsibility of we teachers, educators down in school. It should start right from the elementary level. Now, one of the surveys, again, I will quote, it was a national survey that was done where they tried to understand what is it that the employers consider to be the most desirable personal traits when candidates come and apply. Now, no doubt, when they have surveyed and they realize that there are some top important C's that is there, everybody has different C's. So here, what the surveys identified was different. Now, for an elementary student, communication training can be helping out them in various platforms. For example, a kid in school, however we say that today bullying, ragging doesn't happen, it is true. But then subtly when the child goes to a park at our society, at the community, there's some negative peer pressure that happens. There can be slight bullying that would happen. Now, in case the child is trained to communicate at an early age in a well-trained manner, in a positive manner, the child would be able to handle these smaller problems. He or she would not wait for those problems to become a bigger monster in the years to come. Communication skills are vastly underemphasized in the school curriculum. If you see nowadays, there's a lot of colleges and research centers which work on life skills. We would come back on discussing about the life skills where communication should be at the top. In the entire discussion, we realized that it's all about our kids growing up, going to the colleges, then getting into professional colleges, and then going for jobs or work or starting something, becoming an entrepreneur. Now, when colleges and universities are working hard to demonstrate that the candidate or the student who they are having is ready for workplace, they also give feedback to educators or to the society, saying that there is something that is lacking, which they are working on, which should have started much earlier, and that's communication skills. No doubt, this prominent issue of soft skill gap that's very evident, but still it is something that we all can work on. Now, as I was mentioning 2 minutes back, that there are 4 C's that people look at it, that employers would like to see in their employees: communication, creativity, critical thinking, and collaboration. They would like to see all these qualities in their employees. And many professionals agree that, strengthening these qualities right in the school days would help them to improve their employability. The best part or the good news of all these things surveys is that communication skill is something that can be taught, can be practiced, and constantly improved upon. Then why not do it in the school? Why not let's work in it? Communication skills have played an important part of our existing knowledge and belief. So today, if I'm having a knowledge, or if I have a perception or belief, if I have cemented something, it's all because of the communication, the way the words were used while sharing that particular information or knowledge by somebody too. So when you see, when we look back at the timeline, how did the kids learn? So learn to speak. So it's like this. You look back, we played with our friends. So we started conversations. Came back, started narrating what happened. And as we grew, we had questions by parents, questions by teachers, questions by strangers, questions by third person, fourth person. And these questions further led to expressing our opinions. So there was a time where we just spoke. Then there was a time where we gave out what they wanted to hear. And then came a time then comes a time in everybody's life where we express our opinion. What is it that we believe in? What is it that we would like to convey? What is our thought process? In the same way, it goes for writing. So writing, it starts from, we read. First, we teach this child to read. Literacy. Once they read, we help them with writing. And when they start writing, that is the time when the child starts thinking about, critically thinks about the topic that is being given to them. Critical thinking develops. All these things we all can include in our curriculum, in our day-to-day agenda of delivery. So when we sequence our class, so I know in today when we are working on online, so there are some academic classes, then there are personality development classes, then there are competitions online that's being held. All these things will help them to communicate with each other. Now, as I was mentioning, life skills, whether it is CBSE, whether it is the IB, they all look at improvising, they all look at bringing back the life skills that's necessary in anybody's life. And interpersonal skills are something, which helps the child to communicate very effectively. There are people where we say that, he's a people's person, he's very good at it. Whether it is verbal communication or whether it is non-verbal communication, he does very good. Now, it's not necessary that it should always be about being, having interpersonal skills as a person. We should also be very good listeners. The news hours that present different debates, that's not the kind of a communication that we should be developing in our students, because the agenda sits at one place and the discussion goes to the other level. In the entire capsule of communication, if you see carefully, listening is also one of the most important component. It's usually overlooked because people feel that, communication is something what I wanted, I told. Now, I don't know whether you want to listen or I don't want to listen to you. That cannot be the situation. That cannot be the condition. The condition should be any discussion should be progressive. Any discussion should be constructive. It should be positive. So that all happens when we are able to listen, understand, analyze, synthesize the thought process, and then we help the students in all these things. Now, you may think that, okay, so we will have to work out on an action plan. What is it that we should do so that students' communication skills can be improved? And now, if we look at the olden times, the turncoat debates, normal debates, jam sessions, extempos, these simple, normal action plans or activities goes a long way to help the students to improve their communication skills, basically their thought process. So possibility is there that the first time when the child comes onto the stage, or when the child, for the first time when the child tries to communicate, may not be in the positive line or in the positive track, but with the time when the child is exposed to the right things, we are very sure that the child would acquire good, effective communication skills. And I think that is what we all should be working towards. Knowledge would come. Knowledge would come when they read, when they do research. But this knowledge, in order to be passed on, in order to be used by the society, we need to communicate it properly. And I think that is where we all should be working, especially in the school. College, by the time they are there in the college and the universities, already the way we communicate, the way we think is already framed. No doubt colleges and universities do brush on it. No denial about it. Now, at the end of the day, I think we need communication to empower the students so that they take responsibility. They are accountable. Whatever they want, they can accomplish. And most importantly, they can be a part of that big picture, that the world is. So it's not that they should be a part of it. They should be a visible part of the big picture. I am grateful and thankful for giving this particular platform to share my experience. Thank you, Shivayu.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you for sharing those wonderful thoughts with us. And we can see how such eminent educators like yourself add so much of value to your students when you stress on these other aspects like communication skills. Thank you. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
It is now time to introduce to you our next and the last speaker. It is my privilege to introduce to you Ms. Rashmi Shetty. Rashmi is the co-founder of Storyteller 101 Communications, which is a marketing communications and public relations agency. She has 20 years of experience in communications across public relations and branding, and has worked with brands like Marriott Kathmandu, Airtel, Tata, Diebold Nixdorf, Siemens, Gulf Air, Bajaj Alliance, ICPCI, Bureau Veritas, MoneyGram, Chumbak, GE, Emphasis, and many others. She holds a master's in business administration and lives in Mumbai. Besides her passion for public relations, Rashmi pursues art, music, writing, and works closely on various social projects. Rashmi, over to you. You can switch on your video if you want, and I will also hand over the controls to you for you to present.
Thanks, Shivayu. Right. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, loud and clear, and we can see your screen.
You can see the screen too. Great. Wonderful. Thank you for the introduction, Shivayu. And it was just amazing hearing all the speakers speak about the art of communication, something that I've been pursuing for the last 20 years, and to see its growing importance. But what's more heartening for me is to see the participation that's there today for the webinar, because there's so many students who are online, there are educators, there are parents, there are children. And this truly shows their interest to learn more about communication, because communication is an integral part of whatever we do, whether it's personally or in our professional field. So that itself shows that we are in this together, and we're in this together for education. We have now moved on to a stage which we all call as the new normal. What exactly is this new normal? What does it mean for educators, for students, for professionals? It is about working from wherever they are. It's that remote location from where they are working and learning things. It's a reduction in interaction with their peers. But what's surprising for us at Storytellers 101 Communications is that we actually realized this 4 years ago. In the field that we operate, we are into the field of public relations where we talk about brands and businesses to media and to non-media people. We realize that we have to go and meet our clients. We have to go and meet the media. We have to go and meet the bloggers. So why exactly do we need to go to an office to do this? We need to ideate as a team, which we can do through technology. And that's how we established Storytellers 101 Communications. And now it's been 4 years of us doing this. And why am I talking about Storytellers to all of you? Is because I would like you to know that this new normal which you're grappling with today is something you will understand quickly. And with people like Notebook who are organizing such amazing webinars, it will be easy for you to understand what does this entail? What does this new normal entail? What is the impact it has on my child's education, on me as a working professional, and how can I cope up with it? It has its multiple implications on our personal and professional life. All this is new to us, but what is important and what will see us get through this is our art of expression and our art of communication. We have overcome this, like what Shailaja just said, is that we've overcome all of this by communicating, by talking, by interacting with people, and that's what we'll have to keep on doing as we go ahead. Communication mostly, as Achin rightly said, has been a neglected field. We feel if a student does well in history, geography, math, science, gets those marks, that's good enough. But imagine if that same student who learned so much about history is sitting and discussing with people what's happening right now and is able to actually use that knowledge that he's learned and put it across and say, you know, we had a similar pandemic happening 100 years ago, and this is what happened then, and this is what we could do now. That is when they know that he's truly learned something, that he truly has a knowledge of something, which is why it's very important that we learn how to communicate and how to express ourselves. All of the speakers before me have said on what we can do on fun with learning, on the different C's, on how technology can really change this entire situation and how we can adapt to this new normal. What I'd like to touch on is the basics. The first fundamental thing about communication would be, what do you want to communicate? Just think over this point for some time. Think over what is that you want to really speak. What is that you want to convey? For example, all of us today who've come for this webinar, we've come prepared because we knew that everybody who's attending this webinar has taken time out from their busy schedules, wants to learn how to be an effective communicator, and wants to know how to help the entire education system and help our younger generation. Once we're clear on that, we put together a roadmap and we talk about the what. What is that you want to communicate? What will be more important than what you want to communicate is the how. If you go onto the Notebook platform, you will actually see a lot of content on regional languages. You will see a lot of content which is graphical. We have to figure out how do we want now to communicate what we want to communicate. Think of how you teach a small child. When you start teaching a child how to write A, you talk about, let's do the slanting line, let's do the sweeping line, and now try that with a teenager. The person is just going to roll up their eyes and wonder, why exactly did you speak to them about sleeping and slanting lines when they know much more? So it's important for us to figure out, how do we communicate? Do we communicate in the language that they understand? Should we communicate through graphics? Should we communicate through the digital medium? Should we communicate through storytelling? And with every passing generation, as we all know, the whys have increased, and rightly so. I was recently in a classroom session with the Xavier's Institute of Communication, and every point that I made was countered with a why. And that, I think, is very healthy, because that helps us fine-tune our communication, where we know the what, we know the how, and then we fine-tune it to finally reach the end consumer. As educators, it is our role, as mentors, it is our role to pass on our craft and skill to the next generation. We know what we want to say. We figure out how we want to say it. The minute we figure out why we want to say that, that makes it a very effective communication. And to give you a sense of all this from the communication experience that I have been through, I have worked as part of Storytellers Communications we have looked into a telecom operator where telecommunications, as you know, in India, we have more telephone connections as compared to the washrooms that we have. So people need to have their telephones with them no matter what. The network was down for a day. As communicators, now we have to figure out, what do we tell people? Do we tell people, the network is down today, it's going to be up tomorrow, it's fine? They're going to be angry because they need to speak to their loved ones. They need to communicate things. We brainstormed over that and we went to the how. We said, let's go ahead and do a mass communication where we tell everybody the ground reality and let them know what's happening. The essence was, what do we communicate to people? Do we tell them that we didn't have the backup, we didn't do things right, or that we had the backup and things still went wrong? How do we go about doing this? Our basic thing, our basic line of communication that we came out with finally was, I am sorry. So people whose networks were down, we told them that we are sorry without any excuses, without any reasons. We merely told them that we are sorry and we are working towards getting this up. And why did we do this? Because we acknowledged that people really wanted their telecom network to be up. They really wanted to speak to people and they were not going to buy stories. A simple apology worked wonders for the client. As a result, they had amazing social media traction. People supported them through the tough time. So it's all about what, how, and why. If you're looking at your student fraternity also, I have a 13-year-old, and he talks about the entire fact about how he's now a teenager and how he knows more than I know. So you've got to figure out more than them. You've got to figure out more than what is there in the textbooks, and you've got to really figure out a way to communicate to these people. Coming back to this front, where I've just spoken about the key aspects of what, how, and why. This impacts our education, our communication. It impacts all our personal thoughts that we have, all our personal relationships that we have. But how does it affect our professional side is also what all the other speakers spoken about. But as somebody who's in the communication industry, I'd like to put it out there that the communication industry is here to stay. It's only growing, where you're talking about PR, public relations, which we as storytellers do, or you're talking about advertising, journalism, blogging, it's all there. So what essentially should you remember? In communication, remember this, that every business, every individual is a story, and you can become the storyteller. You just have to think of it in that format. Figure out the what, how, and the why. Once you figure out these three elements, you are in a better position to communicate. Take your time, figure out what is that you want to communicate. How would you like to communicate? And why would you choose that tool depending on your target audience? Throughout all this, maintain your personal style and emotion. Philip spoke about confidentiality and honesty, and I cannot speak more on that, because integrity in how you communicate, your style of communication is who you are. So you've got to have your own personal style and emotion. And remember that you at the end are a storyteller and you are out there to speak your story, your understanding. So communicate that effectively after having thought of the what, how, and why. In conclusion, honestly, I'd just like to leave you with this wonderful lines from one of my favorite ghazal singers, my favorite singer actually. And he sang this wonderful song where he said, "Jab kabhi bolna, waqt par bolna, mudda to sochna, muktasar bolna." I hope I've got the intonations properly, but it clearly means that whenever you go and speak as per your time and opportunity, think over it a lot and speak precisely. We storytellers, one-on-one communications, are very glad to have partnered and to be here on this platform and to speak to all wonderful people who've come together. And like I said when I began off, we have got through this in 4 years, but thanks to Notebook and other wonderful educators and communication specialists, we will get together all of this pandemic situation, and we will accept the new normal much faster than we did. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Rashmi. Thank you for those wonderful thoughts. I'm sure a lot of us here have been furiously scribbling notes. And the what, how, and why methods is going to stay for us for a while to come. Thank you. Thank you so much for that. It is now time to move on to our questions and answers. During the course of this webinar, some people have been typing their questions in. Also, during the time of the registration, we have had quite a few people sending us their questions. We will try to take as many of them as possible. However, due to paucity of time, some of them might get left out. But like every other webinar, we will get back to you over email with the responses from our speakers. The first question is for Ms. Philip Burrett. So the question asks, you have been in a leadership role in Doon School, which is an institution that we as school principals look up to. Give me some ground rules to develop communication skills for students in my schools. Did you conduct any particular activity? Sir, if you could take this one.
Shavayu. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, loud and clear.
Yeah. Okay. So by the way, very simply, we had the advantage, of course, in Doon that most of our students would speak good English. We did have government scholars who were not very powerful. They didn't have much of a control over the language. But what happened was that encouraging them to speak to others and in their houses when they spoke, all of them improved over the years. We did also have a lot of public speaking. We offered the Trinity College exams. Then later on, we moved to the LAMDA exams. We have a lot of debating, a lot of public speaking. We encourage them to take assemblies, to give talks. The MUN is very powerful in school. Dramatics is very powerful and very popular. So they could express themselves through, Hindi, English, vernaculars. We also have a very strong and powerful art school and music school, which again is a form of expression. So there is no dearth of outlets by which children express themselves. We also have about 11 publications of different languages. We have science, we have maths, we have English, we have all sorts of publications where students are encouraged to write and express themselves. We also have a weekly, which goes back to 1935, and it's come out every week ever since the school was founded. So these are the ways in which we encourage students to express themselves and to speak out. And it's a very democratic school, so we don't order the children. At the Doon School, the funniest thing is the moment the kid hears the word no, it means they start negotiating. And that's very good. I hope I've answered the question.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The next question is for Achin. Achin, the question asks, how do you tell a story in an audiovisual format?
Yeah, I think good question. Now, I think when it comes to storytelling, and especially in audiovisual format, see, considering the fact that the way we have structured our entire storytelling process at Notebook, if I may tell you, is that we have worked on the concept of augmented storytelling, which is a mix between the real and the digital world. Now, when you look at a student per se, a student can either be an active participant or a passive participant in the learning journey, right? Now, any teacher given a choice would definitely want a student who is an active participant in the learning journey. Now, what happens? Let me give you another example. So when you go to a movie theater and the movie is playing in front of you, you are a passive participant. You are there for entertainment. You are watching the movie, fully knowing that nothing is left to imagination. You can see everything happening in front of you, right in front of you in the screen. Likewise, as far as storytelling is concerned in audiovisual format, if you use too much of things like too much of animation for per se, then the student gets reduced to a passive participant because nothing is left to imagination. We at Notebook, we very consciously try to stay away from it because we want our student to be an active participant in the journey. So what we do basically, we use a lot of hand-drawn illustrations, very beautiful illustration. Art can really make you travel to a different world. And when we show these pictures, when we show these illustrations, while trying to explain a particular story, while trying to tell the story, there are gaps. Meaning to say, if we show a particular sequence, and between the first sequence and the second sequence, the story travels. And that is left to the child's imagination. If you're showing an illustration that a child is waiting for a bus at the bus stop, and the next picture that we show, next illustration that we show, is the child is sitting inside the bus. So we want the child to really imagine, to be an active participant in the whole process. That is very important. Now, if you look at two extremes, one extreme is, say, for example, print, when you read a book, and the other extreme is fully animated content. Now, these are two extremes. While the first extreme, the print, especially for children, for lower classes, may at times be a little boring, unless until learning is really on a pull mode. The student is genuinely interested. The other extreme, again, fully animated content, may reduce the student to a passive participant. So we try to very carefully balance these two things. We also try to balance between the engagement factor and content coverage. Now, this again is a very delicate balancing act. We are very clear that we are here to educate and not to entertain. But having said that, the content has to be engaging enough. So this delicate balancing act between engagement and content coverage is something that we always ensure. Now, what is the end objective? The end objective of storytelling is that storytelling format is that any concept that we are trying to explain, any story that we are trying to tell, be it literature, be it history, be it we are trying to explain something, even in subjects like science or mathematics, we try to connect with real life relevance, for instance. And the objective is the student is left with certain takeaways without even realizing that he is studying. He is enjoying the whole process. He is active participant. He is imagining. He's seeing the video. He's listening to the story, and without even realizing that he is actually studying, he is left with certain takeaways. He understands and grasps the key concepts, the fundamentals. So I think that is how we at Notebook ensure that we work on the storytelling aspect. Over to you, Shubhayu.
Thanks, Sachin. Thanks for that answer. We are running a little short on time, so we'll speed up the questions a little bit. The next one is for Saleha, ma'am. Ma'am, this question asks, there's two parts to this question. The first part is, give us a few ideas on the learning with fun that you mentioned. And also if you could give an example of positive affirmation.
Thank you, Shubhayu. An example for positive affirmation, generally we ask students, have you understood? Or any questions? So when you say any questions, they respond no. Instead, we could say we have understood. So the word no doesn't exist. Or say for a teacher is asking like, why haven't you done your homework today? Instead of that, it could be, what made you miss your homework today? What made you do miss doing your homework today? So negative affirmation doesn't exist. So that's the example. And learn with fun concept. I love food. So let me give you another example of, let's take the burger. Suppose I tell the children, bring the buns, the cheese, tomato, the patty, and come to school. So what they could do is, what I'm trying to teach here through this activity is, how do you write creatively? What is the roadmap of correct writing? So the top of the bun, the first bun is your title, which needs to be short and simple. Then you have your lettuce, your tomato, and your cheese. They are thin, which means you write less. So that's 2 to 3 lines. And the patty is the thickest. Thickest is the main story. So you write 10 to 12 lines. And the end, the last bun, is your conclusion, which again could be a 2 or 3 lines. So, and then they create this, they understand the whole concept, and then they talk about it. So that's how you're building their imagination skills. At the same time, you're teaching them how to write, you're giving them a roadmap, and also you are allowing them to speak. That is one activity. Films play a very important role. So if we could think as teachers, films that indirectly communicate that they are learning. That's what Achin just said, that they wouldn't even know that they are learning. Like an example I can think of a film is this one, the Night in the Museum Part 2. We can take children back to history, because in that film you have Theodore Roosevelt, You have the pharaohs, you have the native Indians, you have Amelia Earhart. So this is all about history. Then I was thinking of another one is drama, very important, plays a very important role, dramatics. If we can have the children enact characters of a particular chapter, they will be able to remember and understand better. Then songs, we are giving this song. I have taught my daughter, water cycle round and round, that song. So it teaches about water cycle, but it's in the form of a song. So they enjoy doing it. Also about gender. How do we teach children gender? Simply play four corners. So it could be one corner is about male gender, one is about female, and one could be miscellaneous, let's say like singer. A singer could be a male or a female. And you can just throw these saying that a man. So man is a male. So they run to that corner. So that's how you make it creative. You make it fun. I hope I've answered the question. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Saleha. I'm sure a lot of the principals would take this back.
My pleasure.
In fact, I have some great news for the principals here. This was discussed with Saleha just while the other sessions were going on. Saleha would love to do a workshop with school children, teachers, and parents. And we would be in touch with you schools regarding how we can facilitate this workshop. It is a 1 day or a 2 day workshop, depending on the various topics that we plan to cover and also the age group of the various children who would attend. But this is something great that has come out of today's webinar. Thank you so much, Saleha.
Thank you. My pleasure. Looking forward.
Question. Manija ma'am, this is for you. This is a principal from a school in Odisha who asks, you very aptly put the importance of listening. How do we develop it in our students?
It's not difficult. At the same time, we have to innovate certain action plans or probably certain activities. I'll give you an example. So possibly listening skills can be improved. For example, we are asking the kids to listen to a particular story. We narrate the story once, and then second time, once again, we narrate. Either we delete something or we add one particular element, maybe a character or maybe something, one extra line that we add. You know what's going to happen? Post that, when we are going to ask the students, so what is it? Like exactly in the newspapers, finding out the differences. So the students will pay more attention of what got added on. And another one of the most common thing, probably we all have played, that is the Chinese whisper. One person tells and the other person carries on. So this would make the person pay attention to what the person is trying to communicate. What happens is, in the entire process, our mind gets divided into so many there is distraction by friends, distraction by environment, distraction on whether I'm going to hear the right thing or not, and everybody knows what's the end. So all these distractions many times lead to not to hear properly. So this is one way to look at it. The other one, I would get back to the same topic, debates. Now, when we talk about debates, what happens is, in school, when we look at the proper debate, like an MUN debate, where we hold on, we listen to the person who is speaking. Post that, we try to counter, either we support or we oppose. But then we listen to their ideas, we listen to what they expressed. So these are few things I think should be helping the teachers, probably schools, when they bring up certain activities, especially in language classes that we do. Sciences also we can do, while teaching. Suddenly, when we are teaching chemistry and all of a sudden you change something in the equation, and then how did this happen? So it's not only about attention, but also about how much auditorily you are paying attention. Yes, there would be people who would challenge certain activities like this, saying that, if the child is more kinesthetic, so possibly you will find that the child is moving a lot rather than paying attention. But then it's a mix. Always a kid is a mix of everything, little auditory, little kinesthetic, little verbal. So you will find everything. it's the only thing is we have to work out on improving. So it's not always about teacher speaking. Sometimes kids come up and they speak. When they speak, the others to respond. So I think that would help.
Thank you
I'm
so
sure
much.
that would help.
I'm sure that advice will go a long way with all the teachers that we have here with us today. We'll quickly move on to the last question. Rashmi, we have one for you, if you're there.
Yes, Shubham.
Yeah. So the gentleman says, wonderful presentation. You have a career in communication. What should one do to develop a career in communication, or what does it take to have a career in communication?
Right. So I think what do you really require to start a career in communication is exactly what I told. Be a storyteller. Enjoy the entire craft of telling a story, of going out there and putting out the things that you believe in, your principles, your integrity, the story that you are, and that you can go and talk to anybody about that. If storytelling is a part of your DNA, then yes, you can pursue a role in communications. Of course, you have various institutes which offer professional courses. You have the Xavier Institute of Communications, you have MICA, you have many such institutes which offer you a proper degree course in communications. But the essence really would be that you like telling stories. And if that's what you have, and that doesn't necessarily mean that you like talking a lot. Talking a lot doesn't really translate into being a good storyteller. When you are able to empathize with your listener, when you're able to empathize with what needs to be said, when you're able to form a story and you like saying that story, I'd highly recommend any person who has that within them to pursue a career in communications. And of course, you have so many institutes which offer you that. And there are organizations like us, where at Storytellers, one-on-one communications, we do offer internships. So one can also take that as they are pursuing their course or before their course if they want to even decide if they want to be in communications. So yes, I think in 3 clear points: be a storyteller, take up a course that you like, and before you take up a course, you can try for internship. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you so much, Rashmi. That was great. Ladies and gentlemen, that's all that we have time for in terms of the questions. We have more questions that have been posted to us, and we will try and share answers over email from our various panelists. Let me remind you once more that the Together for Education webinar happens every week, and we will inform you of the upcoming topics and themes very, very soon. If you have suggestions for topics that you would like to see covered, please do let us know. I would now like to call upon Achin to deliver the vote of thanks. Achin, over to you.
Sure. So I think great session we had. I really enjoyed our session, and I'm sure there have been a lot of takeaways for the audience too. But sir, great clarity and a lot of important points you covered. Takeaways for all of us. Very soon I plan to start a fan club, and I'm sure that many of us will join. Saleha, really liked your airline example. Positivity is the key to effective communication. I completely agree with you. Manija ma'am, liked your
Thank
real
you,
life
Achin.
perspective. Your students are indeed very lucky. That's the way I'll put it. And Rashmi, great presentation. All of us took notes. And as far as the audience is concerned, I'd really like to thank each one of you for being a part of this journey. Great encouragement. So I'm sure that it has been value adding. Sincerely thank all of you. Stay safe. Take care. Goodbye.
Goodbye. Thank you.